Welcome to the American Intelligence Media. My name is Douglas Gabriel. I'm your host, and I have with me Michael McKibben. And today, we're going to talk about the keys to the digital kingdom. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi, Douglas. Great to be with you.
Well, once again, we have followed you down into the mines, and we've seen what you've brought up, and it's shining like a star. I cannot believe that it has gone one level deeper, and hopefully this is the bottom, because what you've found out are the encryption keys. You have found out the encryption keys to every single transmission that happens on the internet, who owns it, and perhaps why it is that we don't even know that it exists. So Let's talk about that today, Michael. What have you found?
We're still researching, by the way. The information is just pouring out now, but let me bottom line it for you. The Clinton administration in '93 started a plan to give the FBI the encryption backdoor keys to the internet. And by that I mean anytime you connect from one computer to another, those computers exchange keys. And without those keys, you can't encrypt or decrypt the signal coming from one machine to another. So literally, these keys are used in every transaction on the planet that uses the internet. And what we've discovered, and I'm still reeling. My mind is boggled by what we've now come to find out. But that a company called Entrust was created in 1998 as a spin-off of a Canadian telephone company, which is now named something else, but basically the infrastructure is still there. And what we discovered is that a private company named Entrust became the certificate authority for issuing these digital keys for many organizations. And we've had people looking at the securities filings for this company from 1998 to 2009 when they sold out to a San Francisco firm. And what we discovered astoundingly is that Hillary Clinton's partner at the Rose Law Firm directs this company as a Class 1 director. He was slipped in late 2003. And this means that we can show solid proof that the entire internet has been compromised and that Hillary Clinton and the Clintons have access to all the digital keys for all transactions on the planet. That is just astounding how a private individual could have come to have such power. But the facts are now clear. That's the circumstance we're in right now. This includes almost all of the executive agencies of the government, and that includes the Department of Treasury, Department of Commerce. I'm just looking up that list right here. Commerce, Treasury, National Institute of Standards and Technology, General Services Agency, the GSA, the Department of State, the Department of Energy, the U.S. Post Office, the U.S. Patent Office, the U.S. Marine Corps, the U.S. Coast Guard, and on and on and on. And then, beyond that, we see the names of most of the major telecommunications players in Canada, in Scandinavia, in Denmark. The list, according to their records, they have over 2,000 key customers. And therefore, the Clintons, through their director, his name is Jerry C. Jones, have access to the entire back door of the internet.
Even
so they can go in.
The NSA is subservient
to
this corporation, Entrust, who we should not entrust with anything. And they who owns them, who runs them, that's another whole question.
Orlando Bravo. Some dude out in California.
So it comes down to a company, Thoma Bravo, that actually controls Entrust. So Entrust, let's get this straight. a Canadian company, basically the federalized Canadian telecommunications system, created this bogus excuse for what are called public key infrastructure certificates. And we had heard about this through something called the Federal Bridge Certificate Authority, which is just one of the hubs. And that hub or another hub may control the Department of Defense and a whole lot of things like that. And then another hub controls all these corporations, and another hub controls the satellites and the whole. So everything is controlled by this one way or the other. For sure, it comes back to a central hub called the Federal Common Policy. And when we looked
Correct.
up that committee that runs this, they simply give their authority out to a corporation. That's all they do. They're basically just yes men.
They
Nod
do.
their head.
They do. I forgot to add the FDIC, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and get this, the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff,
Everything.
and the Marine Corps.
This explains why the Clintons never get prosecuted.
Right.
They not only are surveilling all of these things, but they have the ability to target and attack them.
Right.
And that's what we're going to talk about with the president's executive order in a bit. But let's just stay on this for a moment. So as we have been saying since the 1990s, early, patents, anything to do with technology, information, digital, whatever, which led up to the Internet of Things patent of Richard C. Walker, which again was all centered down there in Rose Law Firm. We noticed this with the QRS-11 when Hillary's company, which was started here in America and then went to Europe and then kind of took over the whole world. QRS-11 controls navigations for planes, so we would say Hillary can bring down planes and trains. It controls many navigation devices for many things that are moving. Well, now we know that Hillary has been there from the beginning with the plan to put a tax on every single thing on the internet. So if there was someone who owns the internet, it would be Rose Law Firm, Jerry C. Jones, Hillary and Wild Bill Clinton, James Chandler, that would be Rosenstein and Comey and Mueller, the same group that is still today, the same group that helped bring down 911 and devise, create the domestic attack on our own people, and then now has created the attack on our election system and basically everything.
Just think about what has happened since 1993. We had the Oklahoma City bombing. We had the World Trade Center bombing. We had Kosovo. We had Rwanda. You just carry on. You mentioned 911. It now appears when we put this timeline together that every one of these events was designed to further perfect this plan to take over the digital infrastructure, and each one was a national security excuse to increase the amount of police state surveillance on all of us.
And John Brennan, James Comey, and Robert Mueller are three of the guiltiest people involved. I mean, we went into a talk yesterday with Betsy about the fact that John Brennan was in Riyadh when that explosion happened. He was in charge of Oklahoma City when that happened. He was in charge of hiding. I forgot that they were in charge of hiding the BCCI scandal with Jimmy Carter. I forgot about Noriega and the fact the horrible things they did and what happened in Panama. These three people played musical chairs in the highest positions of law enforcement and subversive activity and corporate activity. Now it's coming out the Mueller and Comey connections were just they're rife. We've done intelligence reports on it. It's so much I don't even want to get into it. But the corruption, same old people, same way. But now we find
now we know
the keys.
how they do it.
You found the keys.
The key. They just grab the keys. They go into whatever house they want to go into. They rummage through the files. They get what they want. They figure out how they can influence the person through whatever means, graft, corruption, blackmail, extortion, whatever they need to get what they want. They go get it, and then they use it against the person until that target gives in, and then they get what they want. That's why they've stayed in power for so many years, for, decades now.
This explains the 55,000 missing struck page communications, the fact that, McCabe's messages, we can't get them.
Can I stop you there?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just describe for somebody who's not sure what encryption keys are, how easy it would be when you have the keys. So let's say you want to delete 55,000 emails that you know are on James Comey's PC in the FBI, supposedly a secure network. Well, if you are in trust, and you have the keys that Comey uses to get in and out of his computer, then all you need to do is use those keys and you're in. It's that easy.
Well, that's the digital part. I'm going to give a sad segue to that, which is the sad note that the FBI reopened the 4 or 5 different Clinton Foundation investigations, and this time a number of agents went down to Little Rock, Arkansas, and they filled a plane with physical evidence to bring back to D.C. And guess what? No indictments, no questioning, no nothing. So the Clintons are very well known for stealing pertinent documents. They have people in jail at this moment who have been charged for stealing the documents they needed to be stolen out of federal facilities. They knew what was happening with the server. Courtesy messages to China for every single email coming in and out was not an accident because, as you say, she has the keys to it all. That's the reason she refused.
Well, you have the keys that observe the communication that people use while they're brainstorming before they've even decided what they want to do. So you can stay one step ahead of the sheriff forever with this power.
Exactly. And that's the next thing I was going to say. That's why the Clintons are always one step ahead. If the Clintons are going to be charged with something, what happens? Somebody either dies beforehand on the way there. You know how many Clintonites have died going to the FBI, going there to report their crimes? We don't even know how many. But why are they always one step ahead? Why is there a fire conveniently in the place where certain documents were going to be subpoenaed? Why does the FBI do things that nobody knows who gives them the commands? Could it be possibly that Clinton has basically the SES union in the pocket of her
most
in her
definitely.
hand, basically?
Most definitely. These are literally the keys to the kingdom. She dictates to the SES what goes on.
Now, we speculated.
With these keys, there's ultimate power here.
So these keys belong to a corporation. And Orlando Bravo, we don't even know who
they don't
he
belong.
is.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but they don't belong to the corporation. The corporation maintains the list of keys that are supposedly the private property of the corporation that ordered them from them. Right. That's technically what goes on here.
And they pay, as you pointed out, monthly fees. So it's a tax. It's a tax on the internet that nobody even has added up.
Right.
If we added it up, I can't imagine how much it would be. But anyway, that's probably a tax-free tax on the internet. You want to talk about net neutrality? How about Hillary Clinton net neutrality? She is getting a piece of the pie. She got a piece of the pie at China through Walmart, through Sam Walton, sitting on a paid position of the Walton board and getting the Chinese into the World Trade Organization. She did it with Russia, with Skolkovo, the tech city that she built and made our tech lords build for Vladimir Putin. You know, she gave him $400 million to build their last uranium enrichment plant at the last time they had a nuclear summit. I mean, no one could be in her pocket more. She gave out all of her information to China, and she knew at any moment that if she wanted, she could go look at, attack, and close down any resistance to her.
Speaking of China, one of the customers of Entrust is the government of China Financial Certification Authority.
Which is basically the whole key
and another one's
to their fake stock
Bank
market, their whole fake economy, their fake supposed gold-backed yuan. It's all fake. It's all digits. That's why Eric Schmidt, who is like Count Dooku, he's like the bad Jedi Knight who's gone to China to build what? Robot warriors. But that robot warrior is not in a bunch of robots. It's in the digital system because he knows how to use this PSYOPs internet system to control people, and he's got a system called Dragonfly. It gives cultural points based upon your digital activity.
If I could stop you there, what I am pretty sure of is that Hillary and Bill didn't do this programming. that
No,
this
that is
programming was
very
very likely
funny.
done by Google.
You, the man who is worked with the greatest programmers who created scalable social networking and the capacity for the internet to even work, as well as these keys. That would have been simply another one of your programs, some kind of recognition program, so that you would have honest connections with honest people. I mean, these keys go out and are given to anybody who pays. You can be a radical Islamic terrorist. It does not matter. As they pointed out, 17 years after 9/11, the FBI has done nothing to take down radical Islamic terrorist sites in America. They even have how many different armed encampments where they are training people to kill Americans at this very moment. You can read these reports. We've given them out. This is no joke. The FBI is not on our side, folks. Hillary runs the FBI. And what was that one thing you came up with? The smallest list of people who are in control of basically the whole world. Because once you control these keys, you control the internet, you control online economy, which is a national security interest for everyone, especially America. You start messing with this supposed free internet system, and you're messing with people's income, you're messing with war, you're messing with national security, and thus that is Trump's new executive order, which created a second national emergency on our hands, stating that we are in a cyber warfare, more or less, and that he's focused on the election and foreign and domestic, underline domestic. He took the old Obama EOs that he wrote, executive orders that he wrote, which we can go into in great detail because they're such a joke. But what Trump did is he turned it on them, as he always does, the Trump effect. Oh, you want to spend 2 years going after me for Russian interference? Go ahead, bring out all that you have. Hit me with your best shot. Now it's nothing. I'm going to turn it on you, Mr. Mueller. You are now a domestic enemy of people who meddled in the election because this crossfire hurricane CIA John Brennan started with Peter Strzok in the CIA counterintelligence department is still operating as the special counsel. So everyone involved in that is part of a conspiracy to use digital communication and otherwise, because this is a carte blanche executive order that Trump just wrote, that put us in a second national emergency. He has now the power to go after these people. He has the power to take away Hillary Clinton's keys. And in a minute, let's go into why they used Obama's executive orders to attack Trump. And now Trump has turned it around to let them attack themselves, because all it was demanding is lawfulness. Rule of law will put them all in jail. And what you've found out is how to go after the whole thing. We couldn't figure out how to turn the internet off. If people don't pay their dues and the public key infrastructures do not give certification and clarification that the person you can communicate with can be trusted, then the internet fails instantaneously, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah, it's all based on trust. Whoever is managing these lists, this is why they use the word trust so much in these environments, because they're not trustworthy. So therefore they have to overuse the word trust in order to fool most people into thinking, oh, well, they say they're trustworthy, they must be trustworthy. Well, no, they're not. They're completely untrustworthy, and we're getting screwed every time we make a connection on the internet.
Now, let's explain for people, because we did in a previous audio, but it's so stupid that I want to recap this just to prove how utterly insane and stupid this system is. So, the tax on the internet is not controlled by the people who actually own the wires and cables and even satellites of the internet. Isn't that amazing? The people who own it don't get to charge a tax. Now, the people who provide internet service providers, they get to charge whatever they want, and then they have to pay for the keys. So anybody who wants to work on the internet has to pay for the PKIs, these keys. Hillary's keys, we'll call them. Hillary's tax. Yes. But the tax, if you ask anybody in Congress, including the stupid people I'm going to name in just a minute, they're going to go, and I don't know anything about this. So the head cabinet members have an IT person, and their head IT person sits on a committee, and that committee is called the Federal Common Policy Committee. And they could be people fresh out of college, and I doubt they can do anything except make the printers run and make sure that their LANs works, or, very basic things. Are they capable of making policy that affects the whole world and determines the greatest tax ever created in human history? I don't think so. Do their bosses on the cabinet even know that they do this? I don't think so. I don't think anybody knows the Federal Common Policy Committee exists, because all they do is grant a charter or charters to companies to govern and rule this entire system of PKIs.
Come on, Douglas. They have a nice website.
The website looks like a junior high school student made it. And they don't meet. I doubt they do anything except just allow, like all senior executive service members do, the same old to continue, the same old bureaucratic rat lines to be fed.
Wait, they do get awards.
They get awards, and that gives them big amounts. But then they see the system and they go, why am I working in the government when I can go out here and work for 100 times more a year? Because I know the secret. And the secret is I'm going to go meet Orlando Bravo, and I'm going to go work for Entrust. I don't care where they are, because they control the market. And if you control this market, you control the taxes, and you control the hub. And the hub is where we had pointed out Richard C. Walker, which goes back to Rose Law Firm and goes back to the same group of people with Hillary and Chandler and IBM Eclipse Foundation. Same old group of people stealing patents. They had to have a hub. We couldn't find the hub because the hub seemed to just vanish into thin air. It had to exist, and we knew that the NSA and everybody else, the Department of Defense, everyone else was subservient to them.
Yep.
And we could see the lines, and we could see the NSA tapping into the lines. We could see the people paying for 40 to 45% of the cost of those lines. Like
the astounding thing to me is that this Entrust group issues the keys to the NSA. Unbelievable.
When I say subservient to the NSA, I work for the NSA. That takes my breath away. That a corporation controls whether or not the NSA is allowed to have a communication, any communication, all communications. Yep. So who are these people? Well, we could just say that they're ruthless tax mongers who happen to
these are sociopaths. These are people that just want control for control's sake, obviously.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the cabal. I'm talking about somebody who works at Entrust and says, well, this is a pretty cool system, man. I sit here, I do nothing, and I make a ton of money.
Right.
Okay, then who retires to Entrust? We need to find out who is on this asset management company ran by Orlando Bravo, who no one's ever heard of. And we need to find out who that money's really going to, the offshore accounts, and then we'd get it going on. Because what Trump just did with his executive order declaring a national emergency in relationship to the attacks, he was talking, let's go back. During Obama's time, the attacks were by China on our intellectual property, and you are a living proof of the fact that the British do it through our own patent office. The attack on intellectual property is unprecedented in history. Basically, if you have a good idea, you better be ready to have it stolen or you might be killed for it, because the government wants it internationally. The globalists want it. And they don't care about America. They just want to keep the patents and the money flowing to the same people. And so if that's what Obama was doing, nothing in relationship to internet theft of intellectual property, which China was guilty of. They were stealing everything from Lockheed, everything from Boeing, everything from our government, everything, right? So what did he do? Nothing. Russians weren't stealing anything. Nothing. The Chinese would have it blamed on the North Koreans, or they'd blame it on Iran, or they'd blame it on anybody who would work with them for a minute. But anyway, it was the Chinese. And we knew where it happened. We actually blew up that facility. And we blew up a bunch of chemical facilities near there when we had a big war with them over this. And then they surrendered, but they surrendered to Silicon Valley. They didn't surrender to the Department of Defense, China I'm speaking of. So that's the war that was going on. But that's not what on April the 1st, 2015, Barack Obama did. He wrote an executive order saying, I'm going to go after any foreign interference in our election. He didn't say domestic. Why?
Right.
At that moment, people don't understand. We've been harping this for a long time, since early.
By the way, that was actually that April 1st, 2015 executive order was more generic. Than it wasn't specifically focused on election. It was focused on infrastructure, on cyber attacks, on anything to do with computers.
Right. it was highlighting what they were going to attack Trump for, which was Russian collusion to attack the Democratic National Committee server, which has never been looked at by a U.S. official. It's only been looked at by a Russian spy who was used as an FBI asset, Dmitry Alperovich, who runs CrowdStrike and is totally bogus. He always leaves he leaves GRU footprints from the 1.0 version. He's an idiot.
You know, it's almost humorous looking at that second executive order on December 28th of 2016, which was a follow-up to the April 1st, 2015. You know, that was April Fool's Day, by the way.
That's my joke.
Oh, that's interesting. That's probably a joke.
That's why I say that's a joke. That was just to go after Trump for the
so
fake narrative.
The second executive order actually names some Russians. And this is like December 28th. He's only got a couple more weeks in office, and he's still feverishly writing executive orders. I mean, how suspicious is that?
It's more than
yet
suspicious.
We're still dealing with this mess that they created by these executive orders.
In April of 2015, they thought Trump had no chance, but they knew that Roger Stone and Paul Manafort had agreed to work with him, and they're kingmakers. They are president makers, and Paul Manafort demonstrated that, and Roger Stone did get Trump through the initial impact. And then they were both taken out, weren't they? And who were they taken out by? Foreign agents working with our weaponized Obama administration. So back in April of 2015, they saw Trump coming, but it wasn't until they knew they had been hacked and they knew they had been breached the Democratic National Committee in April of 2015, believe it or not.
Can I stop you right there?
Yes.
When you say they knew they had been hacked, that with this new information, that's even laughable.
It is.
Because the fact is that Hillary had the keys to everything, so she hacked the DNC herself.
And she asked Dmitry to come in and look in April because the FBI got really anxious when they heard Trump was going to run. So they started to do some preliminary stuff. So they got Franklin Foer to come up with the Trump Tower server, collusion with Alpha Bank leaders who were friends of Putin. Total failure. Total failure. When he announced it on October 30th, 2016, on October 31st, 2016, Comey came out and said, it is incorrect, it's a complete ruse. They had spent the time and huge amounts of money since 2015, spring, about April, actually before that, to start some of these scams because they were so scared of him, because their intelligence reports said that if someone came along with nationalism, populism, was a business person, and didn't want war, they may win the election unless Hillary goes full socialism, which she tried to do but didn't do a good job of. They knew they had the control of the digital systems. They knew they had the U.S. digital system all set up with Eric Schmidt's $1.5 billion donation. They knew they had all of this. But what they didn't have is the fact that Trump had no dirt. In April of 2015, they started opposition research against Trump. This is in the WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
I was reading these. The second WikiLeaks revealed them because they showed that WikiLeaks in December not only had a full file of opposition research on Trump, which they had paid for, which shows that they had paid Perkins Coie. Anybody, they need to look back further to when they started that opposition research with Fusion GPS. But I read the whole file. They had nothing. Then the FBI did an investigation of Trump, could find nothing. So when they found that they had been breached, not hacked, clearly, and at the same time got an assessment report saying Hillary's greatest weakness was Russia and Uranium One, and she will not get elected because of Uranium One, they started interference, a buffer. They came up with the story, and by January of 2016, Comey and his gang were in full-fledged with the Obama administration, creating the Russian dossier. They knew he was going to be a contender.
And I'm sure at the same time they were hacking into every senator, every congressman's computers, reading their email, deciding who they were going to compromise and how they were going to compromise them. That's why we have such a flaccid Congress right now. They've all been compromised by all this data that Hillary and her cohort have collected on all of them.
And look who they compromised, the Senate Intelligence Committee and John McCain. Oh, John McCain just all of a sudden had a bunch of stitches in his head and died. Just when it was found out he was the guy leading the Russian dossier charge, getting all the Russians in line. I can tell you all their names, who cares? McCain was working with Mark Warner, who took over for Dianne Feinstein, of course, after she revealed what GPS Fusion said behind closed doors, but she was there. It was actually Dianne Feinstein, later Mark, and then later, and also Richard Burr was completely part of this, just like Rubio was part of this. Everyone in the Senate Intelligence Committee knew what was going on. They were leading the charge. And this is the part that Hillary knew all about. Why do we think James Wolfe got caught leaking the FISA information to Allie Watkins? That's because Hillary used her keys to go in to manipulate and blackmail, exactly as you said. And who was she blackmailing? She was blackmailing Henry Kerner. That was John McCain's assistant, who's now in charge of all whistleblowers in D.C. That's why no whistleblowers ever get heard. As a matter of fact, some of them die or go to jail, because Henry Kerner, John McCain's right hand, was working with the Senate Intelligence Committee, working with Bruce Orr, working with Christopher Steele. Foreign agent. That means all these people are in Trump's executive order. Every one of them I've just mentioned. Every one of them. We have the dirt.
Right.
Hillary's revealing that dirt as it gets closer and closer to her.
Well, Mr. Trump needs to look at the compilation of all the relationships disclosed by Entrust over their decade of disclosure, and he will see massive amounts of foreign involvement in Entrust. And because Entrust is so trusted by the U.S. government and his agencies in particular, this list proves, in my mind, foreign collusion with all of these entities.
So the tentacles of Entrust go through the internet to all agencies, NSA, DOD, the executive, all branches of government, all corporations. Okay.
Yeah, Chase Manhattan's on here, J.P. Morgan's on here, the National Bank of China's on here. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
And they have foreign interests, so then our national security, which he's going after right now, has been compromised simply by the existence of Entrust. Exactly as you found out with James and our friends over there about the Optech, and every single digital voting machine is controlled by either foreign interests or people like Mitt Romney, or when you come to the broadcasting monopoly of Avid or ISIS management, it's controlled by who? Dianne Feinstein. It goes back to the same people that you have been pointing at who stole your patents, stole your effort, your work, your creativity. Same exact people. Imagine that. And now Trump writes an order that says every one of them and their offshore accounts can be gone after because they have proven, as Rat Rodenstein says, that there was no collusion between Trump campaign and the Russians. There was no corruption. There was really no case, and Trump was never investigated, and there can be no obstruction of justice because that's impossible. And so therefore the entire Rat Rodenstein special counsel investigation with his best friend who was working with him in the 90s stealing patents, Robert Mueller, and giving complete immunity to their best bunk buddy, James Comey. Those three little rats together have been doing this for so long, and now what has come? They've revealed who they are. So when they couldn't find a conspiracy and they blamed it on 25 no-name Russians who cannot be indicted, 3 Russian companies, 2 that didn't exist, 1 that didn't exist during the time of the election that they were charged with interfering in our election. Complete nonsense. Some charges against Manafort and Gates, and nonsense with Papadopoulos and Flynn. They showed who they were.
Well, the hilarious
so
thing
on that
Obama executive order in December of 2016, they even named the Federal Security Service. Well, that's hilarious. Right, that's Russian intelligence. That's like, are we surprised that every country in the world has an intelligence operation? What are you telling us there, Mr. Obama?
Well, let's look at his nonsense. The April 1st one says he can put sanctions on people. That was so he could sanction Trump, so he could
Yeah.
sanction anyone who got in his way. Now, why? Because Trump has international interests. So he could go after any of Trump's international interests. The second one clearly says they're going after Trump's interests. In December of 28, after he's been elected, no longer candidate-elect Trump, they're going after his assets. That's what the second one says to me. And their insurance policy, the Carter Page FISA warrant, was going to continue to monitor them and wiretap them and work against them. And we now know Hillary could use her keys to do the same thing. And I said from the beginning, why is anyone talking about FISA warrants when we know that James Clapper has said that everything is surveilled, everything can be accessed, there's nothing secret, there's no encryption that can stop anything, and now you've proven that Hillary has the keys herself. So if you're on Hillary's side, you can get anything you want. So,
Oh, by the way, I'm looking through that Obama. This is quite humorous. I never saw this before, but on this list of Russians that they named as threats, it's interesting. They have 4 names, and one of them's name's Igor, another one's Sergei, another one's Igor, and another one's Vladimir. I mean, those are the most Russian of Russian names you can get. And then the telling thing here is they use their middle name, which is something you only do if you really know somebody. You know them well. So it's Igor Volenovich Gorobov. It's Sergei Alexandrovich Gizanov, Igor Olegovich Kostyukov, Vladimir Stepanovich Alexiev. I mean, this is made for TV.
the
This is a
beautiful
joke.
Nellie Orr came up with those off her ham radio
Yeah.
system when she was
Well, you
working for
didn't
the
need to. You
CI
just-
and the FBI,
you didn't-
open source works. Come on, don't make fun of her. I thought her dossier was really good. She spent hours working on that with Glenn Simpson, and
The only
I loved
time
it.
you ever use that middle name is if you're a good friend of the person. And then you'll say Igor Volinovich. You don't say that in normal business. This is a stupid person who wrote those.
In the Obama Russian dossier, the writer literally speaks as if they had complete access to Vladimir Putin's mind. They actually refer to thoughts that Vladimir Putin had in his mind, which he didn't even speak. It's the dumbest thing. It's worse than a cartoon. Nellie Orr, Glenn Simpson. Glenn came out and his wife defended him and said he did really good work on it. Don't say Nellie helped. Don't say Cody Shearer helped. Don't say Christopher Steele helped. Don't say Alexandra Chalupa helped. Don't say anybody else helped. My husband and I, we wrote that dossier so that there'd be no foreign influence. See? Only domestic. Because under Obama, you can be a domestic enemy, according to both of his executive orders, and still not be prosecuted. Domestic enemies don't exist, according to him. But according to Trump, he's after those domestic enemies. And he made carte blanche. He can go after last 2016 election. He can go after 2018. He's demanding a report from all the different agencies afterwards. And he says right in it, and if anybody knows of anything going on right now where there is digital theft going on anywhere, even in the mainstream media, any broadcasting, come tell me and I'll act on it. I mean, it's so beautiful. It's exactly what we were hoping might happen, but it's more genius than ever. He declares what is more than martial law, a national emergency, according to Obama. Obama set that up. So now Trump, according to either one of those national emergencies, has power that you can't imagine. He's not using it. He's doing pretty much what Obama
Obama's.
used. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
He used what Obama did, but then he went further. Same thing with the NDAA. He took out some of Obama's paragraphs.
Well, it reminds me.
Legal
it reminded.
propaganda.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, I just keep talking today. I had my cookie before the show. You should warn me not to do that.
You need to have another cup of espresso, man. You're high.
Well, I'm very excited because of some of these discoveries that we're doing separate from our political.
Well, let me read
that
you
know
a
of.
scripture that this reminded me of.
Beautiful.
When I read President Trump's executive order. He lifted a lot of the language out of Obama's earlier, more generic versions of cyber protection. And it reminded me of Genesis 50:20, where the scripture says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good."
That's the Trump effect.
That's what's gone here. That's the Trump effect.
Now, remember during Obama's time, Russia went into Crimea. He did nothing. Russia helped two provinces in Ukraine get away from the Nazis that run Ukraine, that loved Joe Biden and loved John Kerry and loved Victoria Nuland. I mean, those Ukrainian Nazis really are our friends. They help us go after Paul Manafort and Alexander Chalupa. Who could be more happy than to have a Ukrainian on your Democratic National Committee, Hillary, who comes up with the plan to go after Trump for having Russian connections, which then she makes many connections. She's the one who came up with the false $27 million Paul Manafort scam, which was proven a scam within the first week of it coming out. Anyway, when you have friends like that, Hillary, you can really see how you get into power. But with Obama, what did he do? He wrote a stupid executive order that says that only foreigners are our enemies, not domestics. That's because he's domestic and he's our enemy. And then what does he say? He says that I'm going to put sanctions on people. So Crimea, Donetsk, and Luhansk, and all those crazy Ukrainian named provinces down there, they voted for Russia controlling them. Obama did nothing, no sanctions. But when he blames Russian interference in the election, and let me give you the statistics, after stating over and over that there was not one single vote that was changed by Russian interference, they still, after literally 3 reports and now a counterintelligence investigation called Crossfire Hurricane / Mueller Special Counsel investigation, that's the 4th one, after 3 previous intelligence community investigations of the elections, where they said the only interference was through Russia Today, RT, and Sputnik, these are news agencies that are Russian, because Russians are our friends during the entire Obama administration. We gave them everything. Now they're our enemies. The investigations from the joint investigation of the entire intelligence community, which Clapper always says that he did, said there was none except for a breach of the Democratic National Committee server, which is half a paragraph with no evidence. That's it. There was none. There was 21 phishing attempts to the private computers of people who worked at the polling booths. And there was no other Russian meddling by the word of the intelligence community. Then why is all we hear Russia, Trump? Oh, Russia, Trump. Matter of fact, the scams they ran have all come to prove stupid, inept, not thoroughly thought through, and ineffectual. So why does it continue? It continues because of the monopoly of Avid and ISIS management that has taken over the mainstream media. Now, that is all possible because one person, literally from the beginning, has been the queen of the digital keys. And Trump's new, and that's Hillary Clinton, and the Trump's new EO, executive order, says he can go after her. And any friends of the domestic enemies who interfered with the election, I've named them, anyone who associated with Christopher Steele. That's the list of the 32 evil cabal members, literally all of them. Andrew McCabe, James Baker, Carlin, Sally Yates, Loretta Lynch, all of them. Obama, Biden. We have proof of their association with creating the Russian dossier, which the new executive order says is a national emergency. Well, which basically means he can bring in military law because this is an attack against our nation from insiders. It's what we wanted. It's the ability for military tribunals, if the conspiracy can be demonstrated, and it can be demonstrated because of your research with Avid and because of your research with Hillary's keys.
This is proof. The entire senior echelon of the federal government is completely corrupted and in Hillary Clinton's hands. This proves it, and therefore, none of the communication going forward, us citizens have to demand that no federal communication occurs from this point forward, from right now, until this digital key infrastructure is fixed and Hillary is taken off the list.
And no digital votes, only paper.
Oh, well, all the voting machines are compromised by this key system.
And
all of them.
There is a very simple way to do this. To sign the Miller Act, to pay Leader Technology for the stolen IP, which is what this order is about. And these are foreigners. These are the British who stole, British and domestic actors working with foreign nations, stealing your patent. Your patent controlled these things, multiple patents actually, in your IP. So if he simply did this, it would just be a matter of transferring it over, and that tax would be able to be turned into something completely different. Those keys can be done through a central fashion that would be simple, not the way that they have it set up. The way that they have it set up is for exactly what the Richard C. Walker Internet of Things patent is for, which is aggressive remote control. Not only surveillance, but attacks.
And for hiding all the nefarious activity as a ruse for security.
Let's tell the people where we suspect one of the major headquarters for this is in Washington, D.C., because they're all probably thinking, okay, where is this? Is this Silicon Valley? Where is this? Is it in a foreign country? No, it's in a foreign country in a way, because the person who lives there is a foreigner. He's not even an American. And that would be the bunker of Barack Obama, where Valerie Jarrett, to this moment, still gets in the skiff built into that bunker, into their home, where supposedly the Obama girls live, though we've never seen a picture of the Obama girls except once coming in and out of the house. But it has a wall built around it, $5 million in security there all the time. She never comes out, and the presidential daily intelligence report comes to that skiff, and it's still abused exactly like it was for 8 years by the mob of Chicago queen, who, note, Chicago is failing because she's not there, Valerie Jarrett.
It appears so, because we know from the White House website that the U.S. Digital Service was created at the White House with $1.5 billion from Eric Schmidt. At the time when I saw that, I said, what? A $1.5 billion for elections? No, they're building a network. They're building the network hub that can be managed centrally. And I'm sure that's what they did until after the election, and then they just moved all that technology down the street about 3 blocks.
Now, instrumental in what you found is e-government, which is what we're talking about right now. They put everything together. They stole every speck of information they could, and they shared it with Google. And your digital prison is being created for you as we speak. Every keystroke you give creates your digital prison for Alphabet. So when Alphabet comes out, folks, that's it. Let's hope Alphabet never gets put in place. It's the mother company of Google, though it was created after it. A mother that came from nothing. Amazing. Anyway, so when that happens, you're going to see that the U.S. Digital Service has merged with all the banks. It's merged with everything. And where did it go? It's not in the White House anymore, folks. Where did it go? It's the same skiff that was there. They just moved it down the street. And does Obama spend any time there? No. Who does spend time there? Eric Holder runs the OFA, Organizing for Action, which is basically an illegal presidential library merged into a foundation, merged into the Michelle Obama Foundation, merged into the Barack Obama Foundation, merged into OFA, and the money left over from OFA and changed its name and got George Soros donations, and now they got more money to gerrymander America than anyone's ever seen through George Soros, and Eric Holder is there with Valerie Jarrett. Do you think they've given up the White House? They're moving back in, folks, if Trump doesn't get elected. And we now are telling you the very keys that control it.
The lights need to be turned out on this digital access they have by completely reformatting immediately this whole certificate authority that manages these keys. Without it, they'll continue to blackmail and extort. And they will eventually win, because if you're always ahead of the game, the odds are you're going to eventually win.
It's all about the digits. It's all about the digits. The digital world rules right now. Look at the major stock market, the FANG, the big ones. They rule. They're fake, They were created by money from We the People through DARPA and In-Q-Tel. And now I understand that the very system, this key system, for a while was ran by SAIC, which was the branch of the In-Q-Tel. That was a private corporate branch that did the work of our government with no bid military-industrial complex
This
contracts.
company runs SAIC's keys.
Yes, of course. They run it all. So what we get here is we can see that probably this headquarters can be shifted around from place to place because, as you said, they don't have to surveil everybody, just the ones that they wish to target and attack. So
Right.
inside of this home that we're paying for, the taxpayers are paying for, one of the 5 homes we're paying for, full security for Obama, though he doesn't live there, we believe is probably one of the centers for Entrust, for its manipulation by the political branch, which is directly controlled by Hillary Clinton, who, remember, she was a patent attorney. That was her job at Rose Law Firm. She was involved in all of those initial patents. She had her finger in the pie from the beginning before Bill was even elected. So that's the reason we say Hillary and not Bill. Bill was really being controlled by Hillary. She was his controller. And you can't stop her. Because look at the way that every nation bent their knee to her as Secretary of the State. Look at the way that she has completely defied every law in America. Look at her abuse of the emolument clause, her abuse of her foundation, her abuse of her power, her abuse of her money, her abuse of literally, how many people can die until you say one of them isn't an accident? Maybe we should look into it. How can anybody get away with this? Because the digital world controls everything. So when you're targeted, there's really nothing you can do. So what we need to do is, as you said, just turn the system off, change the keys, change the locks, change the keys, and when it's opened, make sure it's what Trump ordered Dan Coates to do. The director of the director of the Office of National Security. He was ordered to end all surveillance of Americans. So the FISA courts need to be transformed. The FBI, the DOJ needs to be transformed. The way we reach out of our country, the Secretary of State and the CIA basically just needs to be dissolved. We now see what they do.
Well,
they act in our own borders.
Corrupted the FBI.
She is the FBI.
Yes, she is.
When you said it earlier, Hillary is the FBI. So anyway, we're going to continue on with this research, and hopefully we're going to be able to nail other centers of this, nail these people, nail where they're at, what they're doing, what they look like, who they associate with, so that we can make this personal, because whether we like it or not, they've made it personal to us, and it's time for us to be the resistance and not a duly elected president fighting against a resistance. And so, hail to the Commander-in-Chief for your new executive order, and what a laugh to you, you impersonator of a president, Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama. It is embarrassing to look back on anything that you did. You have no legacy. And what we look at in terms of Trump's legacy, after 2 years, it's as great as practically any president that has been in the White House. We need to keep offering him our prayers. We need to make sure that we vote for all MAGA candidates. And we need to keep doing our research. And so I salute the Americans for Innovation, and I salute Leader Technologies and all of their stockholders and all the people that work out of the different offices that support your research, Michael. And just say, hail to all patriots.